Welcome to No Mama Grow Mama with Naledi Stones, where we discuss all topics related to health and wellness. Today we're talking to Arie Brentnall about baby wearing. So whether you're a first-time mom considering your first carrier or a self-proclaimed baby wearer, you will learn something new in this discussion. We talk about how to select the right carrier for yourself and also the practice of carrying our babies. I hope you enjoy. Hola, Naledi Stones here with Arie Brentnall, a great advocate and baby-wearing consultant here in Canada, which I want to say that she's a Canadian woman, and I'm so happy to be interviewing her today. She's also the owner and founder of the Canadian Babywearing School. So thank you so much, Arie, for being here with me today.
Thank you, Naledi.
This is really exciting. Okay, so do you want to share a little bit about who you are and your role in the baby-wearing world?
Absolutely, I will. I have been in the baby wearing community for, 11 years now, or the baby wearing industry for 11 years. I have 3 kids who I wore, and when we started, a friend and I started to recognize how valuable these carriers were, and also how few were available in our area. So we started a retail store, and the retail store led really quickly for me into public health work and education. And as soon as I had the experience of getting to work with people who were working with other parents and help them figure out how they could advocate for baby wearing in their role, I was sold, and that was the end of it. So Canadian Babywearing School grew out of that a few years later. I've now been teaching courses for, we're coming into our 10th year. And I get to travel internationally, speak at conferences. I get to work with a lot of companies within the baby wearing industry, which is tons of fun. And I also get to do a volunteer position with an industry organization that I actually helped found 6 years ago, the Baby Carrier Industry Alliance. So I do all of those things. I travel across Canada and run school, Canadian Babywearing School classes here. So that is groups like Salsa babies, retailers, interested parents, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But wherever I am and whatever I'm doing, my goal is to empower and help people to better educate parents on how baby carrying can work for their family. So that's a common thread.
Right. Anyway, so I got to meet you because I had the privilege of being a part of your last, I think it was your last baby wearing training.
It was.
Ago. Yeah. And even though I was a wearer, I've been a wearer for almost 6 years now, and with Salsa babies for just over a year, you blew my mind. Like, you totally changed how I look at baby carrying, how I put my baby on, because my baby is now a year and a half. It's changed how I've actually putting him on my body, and how I think about baby carrying, baby wearing. Actually, that's one thing, is that I now call it baby carrying. But I'm interested, because you actually called it, you said that you wore your baby.
Yes.
And so that's one thing that we talked about in the class, is how it's not so much about wearing babies. So can you talk about that, like the culture of wearing and what you think about it?
Absolutely. So there's a few aspects of this. For some people who purchase carriers, they really connect with it. They connect to other people who are purchasing carriers as well and using them. And the using and buying, and, the way that they're put on, that sort of thing, becomes a little bit of an aspect of their culture. Mm-hmm. They connect to the community of that. And that's what people usually refer to as the baby wearing community. But that's really a small minority of parents who purchase carriers or who use them. Most people want to find a carrier, figure out how to use it, take a Salsa babies class, go for a walk to Starbucks, and pretty much leave it at that. That's the majority of parents in Canada and around the world. Mm-hmm. So one of the things as advocates that I really want to sort of push for, this is something we talked about in our class, is, do we make things inaccessible, or do we limit who might connect with the idea of using a carrier, when we use words like baby wearing,
Mm.
because people they don't associate themselves with other infant products in the same way.
Right.
You don't really connect to your brand of stroller. You might love it, you might not like it that much, but you don't deeply connect to the brand of stroller or high chair, or any other infant product that you use.
Right.
So I feel like sometimes advocates are doing a bit of a disservice by using the word baby wearing, baby wearing, baby wearing. There's hashtags around it. There's sort of shorter forms. I nearly died of happiness the first time that my boyfriend used the shortening BWING when he was texting with me. That made me laugh.
I've never used that before.
No, it's a moment. It will be a moment for you when you use that. It will be a moment.
That's funny.
So it's as with any, industry or profession, there does become, jargon and lingo and slang that we all use and shortenings of things, just to make our communication and our lives easier.
Right.
But I do think specifically in this case, it's a little alienating.
Right.
Anybody who's ever, sat at a party and listened to a handful of engineers or teachers or whatever the profession is, kind of talk shop, knows that everybody else just sort of goes blank and shuts down.
Right.
So when our goal is to actually get parents interested and excited and understanding that the ways that they could use these carriers to really help them, we want to do everything that we possibly can to make that interesting and accessible.
Right.
So that's where we're sitting.
Right. It's funny. I wasn't really thinking about that before, but we don't really say we're going to go baby strollering.
No, we don't stroller.
Yeah, we don't go stroller.
We don't crib.
We don't go baby cribbing. Yeah.
That's totally true.
So why are we baby wearing? So,
yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about that then, like in terms of, I guess, setting the mindset of how we come into carrying? Like, what is it all about then, really?
What it should be about, and realistically what it is when you break it down, is that parents and caregivers want to connect to their babies in their lives.
Right.
They want to have tools that make their lives easier. They want to feel competent. They want to feel like they know what to do. They've got it handled. If their baby's crying or fussy or having a hard time sleeping or just needs, some close time, this is a tool that they can use to get that stuff done.
Right.
And I really think that's the message that connects with most parents. Something that I see a lot of is the sort of new mom or new dad sitting there going, like, now what? We've had this baby, the big event is sort of over, but now we actually have to raise this baby
right.
for the rest of their life. How are we going to go about doing that? And I know as a new parent, you start thinking, we're a consumerist culture. What tools are there? What hacks are there? What apps are there to make my life a little bit easier, and to, make the sort of day-to-day raising and caring for this baby fun and entertaining and enjoyable. And carriers really can encompass all of that.
Right.
They make it easier to exercise. They make it easier to take classes. They make it easier to get out and run your errands. They make it easier to take care of your other kids, take care of your pets. For a lot of women, I know, like you and myself, it makes it easier to work while you're still meeting your baby's needs. And once people start seeing those kind of practical aspects of it, they start to recognize as well that they're actually connecting with their baby at a different level.
Right.
Their baby's calmer. They feel really confident that when something's going wrong, they know what to do to fix it. They know how to make their baby feel better. They know how to stop the crying. They know how to, elicit those smiles. Yeah. So that connection and attachment is what every parent seeks out. All that a new parent wants is to create and continue that attachment to their baby. And especially, I know you have a toddler, but as our babies turn into toddlers and start moving into sort of preschool age, how do we connect with them in that same way? It's so easy to pick a baby up and hold them and feel that connection, but that shifts. And so for a lot of parents, carrying actually does continue to be a little bit of a transition. Right. They still do find that it's helpful. They still do find that it's practical. You hear a lot of people use something like the terminology, let's have a time in. So you take that, tantruming toddler and put them in a carrier and go for a walk around the block. And after a couple of minutes, everybody's chilled out. And things are calm again. So for parents who really connect with carrying, and find carriers that let them do this, they often keep doing it, just because they really do find that long term, it's something that really, works for their families. Because at the end of the day, that's it. If it doesn't work for a family, they're not going to keep doing that. And parents really are just looking for useful tools.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because baby wearing or carriers has always been, in my world. My mom is from Zimbabwe, and so she used to tie my baby dolls to my back. And I know that, yes, like it's always been like it's kind of something I always took for granted, but I never really, it was never really something that I gave like a lot of conscious thought to. Like it's something I always knew it was going to be a part of my world, but I didn't necessarily know why I was doing it. And then it, being in this Western culture, it started to become about like trends and it became a little bit more than just the practice of it. But I really want to highlight that it is a practice about having our babies on us and thinking about, it's the relationship that you want to have with your newborn baby. And as your baby gets older and how you're going to incorporate that, having this child in your life. And then it's a tool that you add to that. So that's what I really love that you're highlighting that. And it does. It's like, it's about your relationship, not about the tool,
not about the thing.
The product. It's not about the thing.
Yes.
It's really about enhancing your life, I guess, and using these little tools that can help us. Yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah.
And I've talked with and worked with so many, women specifically, but people who come from carrying cultures.
Right.
Where that's just what you do. And you don't think about it. And, you carry all sorts of things like your dolls when you're tiny.
Right.
And that's just what your mom, your aunts, the people in your community show you how to do and support. One of my favorite questions to ask people who've come from or have a lot of experience with the carrying culture is, when did you learn to do this? And they sort of look at me like I'm really kind of dumb and say, well, you don't learn, you just know. This is just the way it goes. Mm-hmm. And in Western culture, we don't have that. In a lot of cases, I'm a bit of a history nerd, but things like the Industrial Revolution really cut us off from the concept of this. This was not something that proper wealthy people did, so they stopped doing it. Mm-hmm. And I really think that's tragic, because we missed out. We missed out. And so what happened with the sort of rebirth of baby carrying in the West was that people were looking to other cultures, to carrying cultures. For so many people, their experiences traveling or living elsewhere really brought them to say, like, hey, we're doing it wrong. We're missing out on this attachment. Something that you often see or notice is that when you visit a carrying culture, parents and the babies are happy. Mm-hmm. They're not crying. Babies are also with their families. They're not separated. They're not someplace else. And I think when you take a typical Western parent who's buying a crib and decorating a nursery and kind of doing all of these things, purchasing, like a good consumer, all of the things that we think we need to be good and effective parents, that feels really shallow. And it feels like some aspect of that is missing for them. And what's missing is the connection. You can buy all of these products for your baby, but they won't necessarily aid in a connection. Mm-hmm. And I really do think that that's one of the reasons why baby wearing culture has taken off in some ways, in the ways that it has, mm-hmm. In those Western societies, is because that's missing. And this is carrying culture gives parents a way to buy products, mm-hmm. Which is something that makes us feel comfortable and like we're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. But also to buy products that connect you with your baby, and products that are for that purpose of, really bettering your life.
Right.
And I also think that that's one of the reasons why for so many people, where the products have come from is really important. I'm somebody who tries hard to, purchase from local people, purchase handmade items, purchase items that were made, ethically, and where the artisans are being paid fairly for them. And I've never seen another line of products that pays such close attention to that as the baby wearing industry does. So many companies pay close attention to fair trade designations, fair wage designations, to fabrics that are sourced ethically and that are organic. And that's really where, sort of going back to talk about where carrying culture comes from, I think that's it. Because for parents who are really wanting to feel good about what they're purchasing, as well as feel good about what it does, that really hits it. And that's something that's so important to so many millennials as we, look to pay closer attention to our environment, where things are coming from, and how people who produce these items we use in our day-to-day lives are treated.
Right. Yeah. So you just mentioned buying homemade wraps. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I'm sure some people. I know my first carrier. I'm gonna be honest. My first carrier. Well, that's not true. I guess I was gifted too. But the first carrier I actually used was a homemade wrap. But please talk about that, because now we're all gonna be thinking like, "Woo! Let's just go make our own.
Let's just make our own things." Well, and I mean, coming out of Zimbabwean culture, it's a piece of fabric. It's a square rectangle of fabric. Mm-hmm. That women have used to tie babies on forever.
The homemade stretchy wrap obviously it was a stretchy wrap, so that gives you an indication.
I was going to say, definitely not.
It was not Zimbabwean culture. It was, I don't really have a big connection to my historical culture, but it was a friend of mine that was like, "Hey, I had this really big piece of fabric, so I made you one." So yeah.
Cool. So a lot of people really do sort of have that concept, right? Like, people everywhere just use a piece of fabric. What's the big deal? And there's no big deal to the piece of fabric, but what's missing is that culture of knowing how to use it. Right. And so in the absence of knowing how to use this, simple piece of fabric, there actually used to be a term for it. It was SPOC, S-P-O-C, simple piece of cloth. And so that's what your stretchy was. Just a piece of cloth. All you really have to do is cut it in half and, make it the right width and length, and you've got a carrier.
Right.
For people who like to do it themselves, no reason that they can't. There is wonderful information online that helps you choose appropriate fabrics, figure out the length, and then also learn how to use these.
Okay.
So nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
However, we don't want to sell those. Where that starts becoming a problem is if you make one and you've got a skill set to, understand fabric and sort of figure that out, not a big deal. But when we start selling them, that's when all of a sudden you are now joining the baby carrying industry or the baby product industry. And it's really important in that circumstance that you're doing that according to the, proper channels. We're using a product with our babies. We want to make sure that there's some standards, it's been tested, that there's no lead in the fabric, things along those lines. So if you have the skill set, by all means, make something yourself. There's definitely a lot of information and tutorials. There's patterns for different styles of carriers that you can purchase. And a lot of people really do like that hobbyism. For people like me, who should never be let anywhere near a sewing machine ever, there are lovely things that we can buy.
Right.
And when you look at sort of the process of what goes into a carrier, you can still buy really nice, lovely homemade things. Cottage industry does not necessarily mean not proper industry. Some people, like myself, really do like to purchase things where we have a bit of a connection to the person who made it. Again, supporting an artisan who's local to us. So those definitely exist. Every community has somebody who's making carriers, sewing them, maybe weaving the fabrics for them or hand dyeing the fabrics for them. And there are also some brands where they've sort of created production at a larger volume, but really maintained that sort of handmade feel to it. Carefully sourced fabrics, carefully put together product. So it's really easy to seek that out if that's something that appeals to people.
Right. Well, I guess, and it makes me, my next question, like I was going to be specifically about either homemade or just, created by a local artisan, but it could be for any kind of carrier. I guess two parts to it. How do you know any carrier is safe, like it's good material, it's well made, it's going to be okay for you to use? Oh, there was two parts to the question, but I can only think of one. Answer that one first. So how do you really know?
We can do that.
Because there are probably going to be some that are not safe to use.
Yes, there definitely are. That's a really good question. So a lot of the work that I've done with the industry org that I mentioned, BCIA, is to actually work with a variety of governments on the standards creation process. In some cases, we've been able to participate in that. In other cases, to communicate to the public and to people within the industry on what standards are required of them. So if you want to go ahead and make ring slings, what do you need to do to properly manufacture and test a ring sling? And that can be whether you're manufacturing that in your home or whether you are having that manufactured in a factory overseas. So the standards vary from country to country. So it really depends on what's required in your community. But some general guidelines for people to look at are, first of all, does it comply with whatever the standards of your country are? That's question one. And that's a question that anybody making these things should be able to answer. They should be able to tell you, yes, we do comply. No, we don't. Here's why. So that's a good question. Do they belong to any industry associations? There are lots within the infant product industry. I'm most familiar with the ones in North America. But many international brands will, of course, belong to many, many international, organizations and that sort of thing. So do you belong to any trade organizations or industry organizations? And if so, how long, what for, that kind of thing. Looking on the website and seeing if there are solidly good instructions is a sort of easy cheat to take a look for. You'd be surprised how many people make carriers and don't actually produce the instructions on how to use them. Another one is to find out if you order one or purchase one, does it come with printed instructions? I would never advise somebody to buy a carrier that does not come with printed instructions. That's a really also good sort of cheat to know that this manufacturer is taking themselves seriously. That they've taken the time, energy, and effort to create a printed instruction and send that out with a product. So that's a good one. The last one is, are there warning and safety labels for it? Very specifically in North America, those are required. So the absence of little warning safety labels on any product, on a stretch wrap, on a buckle carrier is a pretty good clue that they probably are not sort of working to fulfill compliance with all product. And I'm most familiar with international standards in Europe and Australia, but I am 99% sure that there's probably not very many markets that don't require at least some labeling. So looking for labeling beyond a simple logo is kind of an easy way of picking up a carrier, looking at it, and figuring out if this is probably something reasonable and safe to use with your baby. Small thing that I'll bring up, because this is something we definitely see a lot of, particularly with people who like to shop on Amazon, on Etsy, and on sort of deal sites, is that there is a fairly thriving market in counterfeit carriers. So people who are, comfortable with buying their, not so made by Gucci sunglasses or bags might not get why it's a big deal to buy a counterfeit carrier or knockoff or, fakes are sort of words that people use. Faux. Do you like my faux Gucci bag? But you're not carrying a baby in your faux Gucci bag.
So I've never actually, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. I've never actually seen it before. Do they label themselves as being a faux?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
It's hard to tell. Okay.
It's, yes. I mean, most people know that if you're buying something, you know, out of the trunk of a car and it's $10, where, you know, the original sunglasses or whatever they are would have been $300, you know what you're getting.
Yes.
But when it comes to baby carriers, that process isn't there because so many people believe that it wouldn't be possible to sell this if it weren't safe. But governments have a really hard time keeping up with things like that sometimes.
Yeah.
May or may not catch shipments. And may or may not be able to police everybody. I know in the past when I've contacted the RCMP to talk to them about counterfeiting that was sort of going on in my community, they were like, kind of not a lot we can do, and kind of not a lot that they can do unless they're catching shipments coming in.
Right.
So a good rule to remember is if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Well, now that's going to be really hard if you're going to go on and buy a used carrier.
Yes, yes. So there are some brands that for the most part we recommend never buying used.
Some brands that you would say,
yes.
Okay, not all styles.
Styles somewhat. It tends to be buckle carriers that are the most counterfeited.
Okay.
Definitely, it tends to be buckle carriers that are the most counterfeited. Probably because people are most interested in purchasing a buckle carrier.
Right.
Most sold and most popular style of carrier on the market. So in Canada, there are sort of some specific places. The general rule is that if somebody is advertising something as a brand name carrier, but the price of it seems to be way under anybody else's cost, that's a problem. Also, if it looks like a brand name carrier but kind of isn't, you know, has different marking, different labeling, maybe a different brand name, that might be something to dig into. That can be as simple as looking through a few websites. A really easy thing is to take the name that they're telling you this product is called, and then add the word counterfeit in a Google search or knockoff, and that will sort of tell you, you know, what you're looking at.
Right.
On the whole, for the first time you're buying a carrier, I really recommend that people purchase something new. There's a lot of reasons for that. The first one is that when you buy a brand new carrier, you have a warranty. Most of the time it's going to be at least a year. So if anything goes wrong with it, you've got recourse and you have a company that's going to back the product and will replace something or, you know, help you with a missing part. You have solid instructions. Something that's a common issue when people are purchasing secondhand is that it might not come with the instructions. The third is that if you've bought from a knowledgeable retailer, they're going to be able to help you moving forward. So if you want, you know, help learning how to use your buckle carrier and a back carry once your baby's hit 10 months old, you could go back to that retailer you purchased from and they're going to help you out. And sort of give you that ongoing product knowledge and support. Also, often the deal's not that great because people particularly feel that they haven't used their carrier much or that it should maintain some value. So they tend to not sell them at garage sale prices. They might knock off 20 or 25% off what they paid retail. So if you consider that somebody may have used a buckle carrier, say for a period of a year, 2 or 3 times a week, their baby spit up on it, they've had to show wash it, spot wash it, they've had vapor blowouts, it happens. What have they cleaned it with?
Right.
How have they used it? How have they stored it? Has any of the fabric, you know, broken down because of the way that it was cared for?
Right.
And so you don't really know what you're getting.
Right.
So you might save 25%, but chances are you've probably lost 75% of the usage life of this carrier. And again, you're not getting the warranty, you're not getting support. You might not get the instructions with it. So I really encourage people to buy a brand new carrier for the first time. If people are wanting to, you know, keep their costs to a minimum and look for something that's a good deal, all retailers have sales. Most retailers will have a discount bin. And also there's a really wide range of pricing when it comes to baby carriers. So should be pretty easy to find something that suits your budget. But that you still get all of those sort of benefits of purchasing something new.
Right. So for a new mom, an expectant mom going out to get their first carrier, Are there any particular styles that you would really advocate for getting, like, if you are, so I don't know, I guess there's like multiple ways that you're coming into it. Like for me, I came into it with like this intention of, I'm going to get one carrier. When I actually went to spend my money, I'm buying one carrier, and that's always going to last.
Everything.
Yes, exactly.
And it's going to last for all your kids.
Yes, exactly. I totally had, I'm like that person all the time anyways, though. But what would ideally, I guess in the most ideal world, what is the best way to go into buying a new carrier?
Perfect. So I like to use the analogy of jeans or shoes when we're buying a carrier. Some people, they're one and done, and they're going to get the one thing, and that's the end of it. I like to say that these are the people who will, wear hiking boots to a wedding because those are their shoes. And they're only going to have one pair, and they're going to do all the things in their one pair of shoes. So if that's your style, you're going to want to find one carrier that suits you. It kind of depends on who's going to be doing the carrying, on how long you want to make your carrier last, and also on whether you want to purchase one that does all the things, or whether you want to purchase maybe 2 or 3 that are a bit more specialized. Also, something to consider is who's doing the carrying. Is your partner going to wear the baby as well? Do they happen to be the same size as you? Because if they are, then, you can pretty easily swap most styles of carrier back and forth. But if your partners are really different size and they plan on wearing the baby a lot as well, they might want their own. So a good thing to consider is that in some cases, the carrier is sort of the baby's accessory. And in some cases, it belongs to the person doing the wearing. Also, do you have a caregiver who's going to wear them, or, a grandparent, somebody else in the baby's life who might be carrying them? If they're doing that a lot, they might want something that just works well for them and fits them most appropriately. On the whole, May ties work really well for a wide variety of circumstances. You can carry a newborn in them, and you can carry a toddler in them. They're pretty one size fits all. So if your partner is a foot taller or a foot shorter than you, they're going to be able to share this as well. And you can send it out, with grandma who likes to take your baby for a walk once a week. So that's a really good style to go with. If you want something really specific for the newborn phase, the stretchy wrap is perfect. They're so cuddly and comfortable, and they just, keep a baby snuggled and tight. And so many people love that. So a stretchy wrap's a really good choice. They also have a lower price point than a lot of other styles. So that lets people kind of get in and see, do they like this carrying thing? Does it work for them? What are their preferences with it? But it's not something that's going to last long term. Most people kind of find that the lifespan of a stretch wrap is about 4 to 6 months. And past that point, they want something with a bit more structure to it to comfortably carry a baby. Ring sling is another good option. They're really great for newborn babies. They hold them very comfortably. Again, they fit basically everybody. It's an easy adjust, and you adjust it every time you put it on. So it doesn't matter if you're sharing it with people who are differently sized than you. But it only goes over one shoulder.
Right.
So never going to be appropriate for an exercise class like Salsa babies. And also, as the baby gets a little bit bigger, you're going to start to hurt if it's your only carrier. So a ring sling is kind of a nice add-on, but not necessarily what you're going to want to go with for your only carrier. They are great also later on if you want to, wear your toddler for 15 minutes. It's easy to pop them in a ring sling. But again, if we're going to go for longer periods, you're going to want something 2-shouldered. Buckle carriers are another potential option, but there are going to be some that will work really, really well to be your one and only, and some that might not. Some buckle carriers are designed to be used from sort of full-term birth on upwards. For the most part, the minimum weight for a buckle carrier is about 7 or 8 pounds. And most can be used for about 35 pounds. So there are some that really require either that you purchase an additional insert or that they don't work terribly well until your baby is about 6-ish months. They might not fit in them. Whereas there are other buckle carriers that are designed to be used from birth on up.
Right.
So that's one of those cases where people really have to kind of look at what's in front of them. If they're shopping in person, what's available in your community, and what are the features of those. Virtually all the product packaging will tell you. So if you're not sure, walk into a store, start picking up boxes and reading. Reading through what those recommended sort of ages and weights are. If you're shopping online, sky's the limit. You can, really find anything you want because there will be a much wider selection available online.
Right. In general, do you find you're most likely going to buy more than one? Like it's almost never going to be that you're going to have just one carrier that you only ever use?
Yes, realistically, yes. Sometimes people interpret that as a bit of a sales pitch.
Right.
When a retailer or an educator says, yeah, you're going to want to buy 4. But realistically, we know that there's a really big difference in the needs between, say, a newborn and an 18-month-old, or even a newborn and a 9-month-old. And again, very few people are the identical size to their partner. You wouldn't really think that you could get through winter sharing a coat with your partner. So it's not the most realistic thing to think that you can get through, an entire season of baby carrying, sharing the product as well. And also some carriers are really great at some things and not so great at others.
Right.
So it realistically, most people are going to probably want 2 or 3. The general suggestions that I give are that you're probably going to want a great newborn carrier. So look at that stretch wrap or ring sling. It's going to get you in, it's going to get you started, and it's going to make life really easy while you're figuring out how to carry your baby. And then they're going to want something 2-shouldered and more supportive to kind of carry them through something for that sort of 6 months and up period. So they might be looking at a buckle carrier is definitely the most popular option. That works for a lot of people. Or they might be looking at a Maytie or maybe even a woven wrap. A woven wrap is utilized in many ways in the same way as a stretchy wrap is. But because the fabric is literally woven together instead of knit the way a stretch wrap is, it can carry and support a much older, heavier baby for a much longer time period.
Right. But we're not talking about this in the sense of collecting carriers. That might be someone's personal choice.
Collecting is its own totally separate ballgame.
You want to have 7 of the same brand with different patterns. That's great. That's wonderful if you want that. That's like having, a wonderfully stocked jean closet.
Yes.
But what we're talking about, like practicality in terms of like what the different
the practicality for the average family, not interested in collecting, not interested in identifying as baby wearers.
Right.
Just wanting, that tool to get through day-to-day life.
Yes.
They're really going to want 2 or 3.
Yes.
The same way that you would purchase, if you look at car seats and how you use them as your child develops, we're really comfortable with this in almost every other product category for babies. We understand that a newborn might really like that bouncy cedar walker. But once they're 5 or 6 months old, they might kind of outgrow it a little bit.
Right.
And that might not entertain them. And then we're putting them in the extra saucer.
Right.
That's more suited to that stage of development. The thing that I think is a little bit different about carriers that kind of throws people for a loop is that there are multiple factors at play. So you're looking not just at your baby's stage and level of development, but also what suits you as the person using the product. So if you have something that suits your baby's development but doesn't suit you, doesn't suit your lifestyle, doesn't suit what you're wanting to do, it's not going to be that useful.
Right.
So we are trying to match up with more than one person's needs.
Right.
When we're looking at a baby carrier, whereas when we're purchasing other products, it's really just what suits the baby.
Right.
And what suits the baby's developmental stage.
So let's talk about that then. Suiting the baby. Yeah. Do you mean
cool.
add more to that question or go for it?
No, I think we could go with that.
Yeah, go.
What we're going to be looking at are the kind of ages and stages of babies and where they can be on your body, and what carriers are going to suit that best. Newborns, we already mentioned. Great newborn carriers are really the stretch wrap and the ring sling. A woven wrap is also another option for a really nice newborn carrier. Although they're not as widely available, particularly in retail stores. So sometimes that's not something that people are as familiar with or have access to. So newborn stage, you're going to be looking at that. They're comfortable, they're easy, they're fast. A newborn is all, scooshed up into a little ball. And it's easy to take that fabric, that really flexible fabric, and get the little squished ball into it in a way that feels comfortable to both of you. As your baby starts developing a little bit more, starts sort of sitting up, stretching their body out, developing some muscular structure, you're going to find that other carriers become easier to use. I mentioned May ties. They are really something else that works well with a newborn baby and continues working on up. But once you hit that sort of 3 to 4 month mark, if you've chosen a newborn carrier, you're probably going to want something with a little more structure and support to more comfortably carry your growing baby. That's really when a lot of people start looking at the woven wrap, the May tie. Buckle carriers are a little bit tricky, unless it's one of the ones that does suit a newborn from sort of birth on up. There's going to be a bit of a period for a lot of the popular buckle carriers from maybe about 4 to 6 months where the baby doesn't really fit in the infant insert, but doesn't really fit in the entire carrier either. So you might find that there's a period where that doesn't work really well. But there's some really new exciting products coming to market that have addressed that really well, where they fit, they adjust, and they really do work from every stage moving forward.
Right.
So that's useful. And those are products that are really widely available in, big box stores and boutiques online. People can access those anywhere. Once your baby can sit up independently, all bets are off. At that point, really any carrier is going to work for them. They're going to be able to be used in any position. For a lot of parents, once their baby starts sitting unassisted and starts moving around and also starts getting heavier, that's often when parents either stop carrying or transition to a back carry. Back carrying is something that seems really scary for people, but more and more parents are really seeing how it's helpful. You don't have this giant toddler staring you in the face.
Right.
You can get things done. For women especially, the weight's really better balanced on our backs. We can carry much heavier weight comfortably on our backs than we can on our front long term. Also a lifestyle thing. You might be pregnant with a second baby or a subsequent baby. Or you might be, parenting a newborn while you also have this toddler. You might be really ready to get out and, go do a lot more things, get out in nature, do the longer hikes, go to festivals, go to more sort of family events like that, especially as your baby gets older. And all of those things are just easier done with a baby on your back. So that's kind of a typical stage for parents.
Right.
And once they've achieved that, once they're comfortable getting a baby on their back and doing a back carry in a carrier that feels comfortable for them, and for the most part, really, most parents are going to be doing that in a buckle carrier again. Sky's the limit. There are carriers that allow you to carry your baby as long as you want to, especially if you're a first-time parent and you're pregnant or have a newborn. You can't possibly look at somebody's preschooler and think, oh yeah, I want to carry you. But the reality is, if you watch what parents are doing when you see them, often they're holding a baby in one arm and pushing a stroller with the other hand. Or they're very slowly walking with, a 3-year-old who doesn't quite keep up the same pace. So how long can parents carry, and how long do those stages stretch out? For people who figure this out and it works, any time that you would otherwise pick up your child and carry them and walk with them, using a carrier that's appropriate for that age is going to make your life 100 times easier.
So much easier.
And keep your arms free. So there are carriers that kind of slot in for each stage and each period. A retailer should be able to tell you that, and in the absence of a knowledgeable retailer, big box store employees usually don't have any familiarity with helping people with carriers. You really can learn a lot from the box and from Google. I suggest taking a look at that and looking closely at what are the stages that this is appropriate for. Is there an insert, some other product that I need to purchase to make this continue to work or work for a different age phase? Also look at the product images. That's another shortcut or a cheat. Do you see somebody, does it say, you can wear this to say 35 pounds, and do you see people comfortably using this with a baby who's obviously getting up close to 35 pounds? So a little bit of research goes a long way here.
Absolutely.
Okay, pause. We're going to take a break for a minute. Wow, there's so much to be discussed in terms of carrying our babies, and the practice and the culture of doing that. And we had no idea where this conversation was going to go when we started chatting today, but we don't want to lose any of this content. So what we're going to do is just pause right here. We're going to split the whole episode into 2 parts. So if you're loving this conversation as much as Arie and I are and having as much fun as we are, go check out part 2, and we're going to keep talking about the practice and culture of carrying our babies. Go check it out. Salsa